Hello everyone, and welcome to Lore Time with the Chibi Inquisitor. Tonight, we dive into Commorragh, the main homeworld for the Dark Eldar, or Drukhari as they are now known. But first a quote from Spirit Seer Ayana Aranal. The Scions of the Dark City would never admit that the unceasing hunger at their core is what drives them to such heights of cruelty. Instead, they maintain that they only act upon their own desires. Some have even managed to convince themselves of this. In truth, unless our cousins in the webway feed upon a constant diet of extreme emotion, they will slowly wither away, leaving naught but a soulless husk. We of the craft worlds deny all such urges, and in doing so, become less than ourselves. Perhaps it is those that we have left to perish who are the lucky ones. Commorragh, the Dark City, is a massive city-state within the Eldar webway that is the primary home of the Dark Eldar, or Drukhari race. It is said to be impossible for outsiders to find, and anarchy and terrorism are a well-established way of life for its debased inhabitants. It is wildly believed to be hidden deep within the interdimensional labyrinth known as the webway, described by the Eldar as the dark stain growing within their holy pathways. Commorragh is no mere metropolis, for it is to the greatest cities of real space as a soaring mountain is to a mound of termites. Its dimensions would be considered impossible if they could be read by conventional means, its population greater than that of a whole star systems. If anything, Commorragh is more like a vast collection of satellite realms and cities linked by a myriad of portals and hidden pathways. Viewed from one perspective, Commorragh is a loose collection of far-flung nodes, spread throughout the arteries of the webway like a malevolent virus. Its clustered concentrations are in reality scattered across the galaxy, thousands of light years apart in places. Yet these locations are linked together by shimmering dimensional shortcuts. Within the webway, the immense distance between each subrealm can be crossed within a single step. The Dark City is known to have wandering shadows that tear apart the unwary, and is bathed in the crimson half-light of the Amali, or Black Suns, dying stars taken from real space by the Eldari at the height of their technological prowess, and installed within their own subrealms within the webway to provide Commorragh with light and power. In the final weeks of the 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler, in 999.M41, the craft world Eldar collapsed several webway portals leading to Commorragh, isolating it from much of the rest of the webway. Given the mutual nature of the webway, however, the Dark Eldar can still use their artificial webway portals, which are part of their technological base, to create temporary tunnels through the warp to reach real space. As a result, they remain largely unaffected by their craft-world cousins' actions. Commorragh's origins date to the apex of the lost Eldar Empire, millennia before even mankind knew of the Eldar's existence. It does not exist in real space, but in the labyrinth dimension of the webway. Yet, the webway is not a true dimension of its own. It has been described instead as a complex network of glowing tunnels through the warp, a mystic tapestry of hidden threads that breach the veil between the immaterium and real space. These analogies are only crude approximations of the reality that the webway is a physical construct created to span the dimensions that underlie the material realm. The webway sits between the material universe and the hyperdimensional physically reactive reality that is the warp, a nexus comparable to the surface of a mirror or a thin piece of fabric cast over something foul and dangerous. The ancient Eldar discovered that it was possible to harness their advanced technology to exist within that reflective interdimensional surface, and to move within the interlocking threads of that veil. The Eldar mastered the original webway network, though it has changed greatly in the long millennia since the end of the Eldar Empire, reshaped by the disaster that claimed so many Eldar souls. Moving between the dimensions is an activity that is always fraught with danger. Such is the skill and technological prowess of the surviving Eldar, that they still choose to do so without hesitation. Though used by the Eldar, the webway was originally forged by the ancient and immensely powerful species known as the Old Ones. They created its vast network of tunnels through the Immaterium millions of Terran years ago to allow them to travel at will to far-flung worlds across the galaxy that served as their colonies, seed planets, and research projects. The webway allowed the Old Ones to enjoy near-instantaneous interstellar travel without risking exposure to the dangers of the warp. Since the fall of the Eldar, the webway has become a shattered and extremely dangerous realm, its darkest corners infested by strange entities from many different realities that comprise the warp. Yet, the webway's myriad of portals still allow the courageous and the malevolent to strike without warning at millions of locations in real space throughout the Milky Way galaxy. Commorragh was originally the greatest of the webway's portal cities before the fall, and was intended to be used to transport a fleet to any of the homeworlds of the Eldar Empire. Because of the access it could grant to even the most far-flung corners of the galaxy in real space, Commorragh was held by the ancient Eldar to be the most important location within the entire webway. Because of this intrinsic strategic value, it is not controlled by any of the dominant factions within the Eldar Empire. Precisely because of this anatomy from the jurisdiction of the great Eldar councils that governed the Empire, the city-port soon became a magnet for all those inhabitants of the Eldar civilization who wished to hide from prying eyes. The realm of Commorragh rapidly expanded as all the wealth and influence of the great Eldar Empire and its allies flowed into its coffers. It spread outward into the webway's void, consuming all other port cities, private estates, and satellite realms of the labyrinth dimension, growing ever larger and even more impressive off the plunders of tens of thousands worlds. Beyond the runic wards that define the borders of Commorragh lie the tributary realms of the Dark Eldar, ancient vassal states of the Dark City dating back to the Fall. These are the hidden domains in which the Dark Eldar enact their vile rites and Machiavellian schemes. To venture unheralded past these satellite realms is to invite destruction. Many large and territorial cabals of the Dark Eldar reside within their twisted geometries. Deadly pirate bands of pitiless warriors who live only to inflict pain on others, and will suffer no intrusion on their realms. Worse things lurk in the crooked shadows or swoop swiftly and silently through the air above in their never-ending hunt for prey. These are the hidden domains in which the Dark Eldar enact their vile rites and devilish schemes. Their origins lie in the tumultuous times that preceded the fall, as the Eldar Empire's hedonistic cults of excess began to thrive. The private realms that they maintained within the webway flourished unseen until the largest of their number grew, large enough to pose a threat to Commorragh itself. Over the course of its long history, the Dark City has absorbed all the vessel domains that is not destroyed outright, linking one massive subrealm to another using the ancient webway portals and gates. Within the gilded corridors and flesh pits of these myriad satellite realms, cavort those demolished Eldar who are responsible for the fall of their own species. Despite all the terror and misery that has befallen the Eldar since the fall, these self-absorbed hedonists still laugh at the warnings of their sober craftworld counterparts. And now a quote from adept Azananis Huo from the Hereticus Majoris. Commorragh is like a city of no other in the universe. It exists outside space and time in the unknowable depths of the Sea of Souls, the realm beyond our realm that idiot savants argue gave birth to all we know. Commorragh's makers, or rather architects as they would claim, did not fashion the city in one place. Rather, each of them used ways unimaginable to lesser beings to fashion their own secret enclaves out of the immaterial realm to serve as fortress, sanctum, pleasure palace, or arena according to their whim. In time, the hubris of these architects grew so great that they created something that breached the very walls between realms. As all crashed into ruins, they fled to their enclaves like rats into their holes. In time, as they grew ever more fearful of the dreadful child that they had sired together, those that survived the tempest strove to connect their realms. So steeped in torture and murder were they that they had no choice. They must do so to feed upon one another, and whoever else they could bring beneath their hand. And so the Eternal City was born. In the deepest depths of the webway lies Commorragh, the primary home of the Dark Eldar. It is often called the Dark City by those who fear to even speak its name, but Commorragh is no mere city as humans think of the term, since it makes even the largest of mankind's hive cities seem to be no more than a termite's mound in comparison to its mountainous bulk. Its dimensions would be considered outright impossible if Commorragh existed within the confines of the physical universe, rather than the webway. Commorragh is more like a vast interlinked network of satellite webway realms and cities linked by innumerable portals and hidden interdimensional pathways. In reality, the Dark City is a loose collection of far-flung Dark Eldar habitation nodes spread across the arteries of the webway like a malignant cancer. Its nodal clusters are scattered at various points across the entire galaxy, thousands of light years apart. Yet these locations are linked together by shimmering interdimensional portals. As such, from the perspective within the webway confines, the immense distances between each of the different subrealms of Commorragh can be crossed with but a single step, using the labyrinth dimension's non-Elucidine physics to teleport seemingly instantaneously across the stars. Commorragh appears within the webway to be a composite urban center on an impossible vast scale, a hazy, contradictory realm whose dimensions can overawe the sanity of any who approach it. Thousands of starships dock each day at its spires, for the Dark Eldar are a far more numerous species than the Imperium of Man or even their own craft-world kin fully suspect. Yet, Commorragh plays host to more than just the Dark Eldar race. Many diverse species of alien mercenaries, bounty hunters, and renegades all risk their souls to do business in Commorragh, hoping to claim just some of the riches to be had in the Dark City. The reaches of the interdimensional space around Commorragh are filled with light trails of spacecraft that pass through the Dark City and webway portals that surround it. Some of these gateways into real space are small and dim, while those above the largest city-states of the realm are massive and can accommodate an entire pirate fleet with ease. A profusion of thorny dock spurs juts from every spire and starscraper, holding Dark Eldar and other strangely shaped Xenos spacecraft fast in crackling violet beams of electromagnetic force. At present, Commorragh is an almost infinite nest of architectural impossibilities and spatial anomalies. Each of its estates has been overdeveloped to the point that their growth has been forced into the vertical plane, and various regions sprouting upwards like needle plants fighting for sunlight. Each of the Dark City's spires and starscrapers is linked to its fellows by curved arches and gossamer-like buttresses, its miles-tall aeries and palaces both reaching upwards and downwards simultaneously, spiraling into the depths of the webway's curved space-time. With every Terran year that passes, the hideous city seeks to spread out over more of that dimension that serves as its foundation. Around the titanic central spires of the Dark City are the trading districts of the old Eldar Empire. The lowliest of ports was once an architectural masterpiece millennia ago, but the ravages of civil war have not been kind to Low Commorragh. Now consists of a mixture of shattered ruins and scavenged former glories. Numerous dilapidated fortress complexes and barter ports now spread out in every direction. The lesser cabals riddle the extremities of the angular black spires with opportunistic growth. The labyrinth depths of the outer zones are so congested that a traveler could travel for months on end without so much of a glimpse of a stolen sun. Many areas that have become twisted beyond recognition by the tremendous upheaval of the fall are hunted by scavengers and spectres. Within the pitch-black catacombs of Lower Commorragh there lurks far larger and uglier creatures than the Dark Eldar, for they are prowled by the lost, and the feral thrive there. One could not possibly visit all the outer districts of Lower Commorragh in a single lifetime, for they are many and varied. Attempting to catalogue them would prove fatal, for the Dark Eldar are highly territorial and tend to kill intruders on sight. One such outer district is Hidden Blade, a crucially placed Cabulite stronghold that sticks out between Port Carmine and Night Sound Gulen. Port Carmine is second only in violent reputation to the Port of Lost Souls, the largest port of the Dark City, that is the principal spaceport from which slaves are brought into Commorragh and raiding parties dispatched to bring further captives. Port Carmine is a violent realm, suffering from constant gang warfare between rival cabals. The immensely tall spires of the spaceport sprout outward for miles, each host to a fleet of ornate spacecraft. Port Carmine's central docks play host to a spectacle or two major Cabulite fleets at full anchor, the Slashed-Eye Cabal and the bloodthirsty Stolen Conscious, locked in a never-ending struggle for dominance. Around Port Carmine lay the war-torn ruins known as the Sprawls. Their bleak streets play host to the parched, carnivorous Dark Eldar that have fallen from grace and wound up on the fringes of their violent society. These wretches are drawn ravenous to a battle whenever one breaks out, vicariously experiencing the acts of extreme violence and drinking in the bloody spectacle to rejuvenate their wasted bodies. Occasionally, they will drag an unfortunate soul who has been fatally wounded into the dark alleyways, where the parched will fight one another over the scraps of their departing soul. The Sprawls eventually give way to a network of atriums and chambers, through which flow the toxic acid-green waterways known as the River of Cadiz. This polluted waterway winds around and throughout the outer districts of central Commorragh, shrouded in subterranean darkness and reefed in mist. Above the toxic surface of the foul river drift thin gravcraft bedecked in faded grandeur. The sorry hosts of these craft earn what little they can by hooking corpses from the Cadiz and selling them as slave food. These corpse fishers often fall prey to jet bikers and sky chariots which streak through the air above the river at dizzying velocity, slashing apart the unfortunate victims in merciless contests of speed. The mercenary district of Set Magraire is found further coreward and is more popularly known as the Null City, a nation-sized shantytown permanently riven by civil war. The permanent smell of cordite hangs over the roofs of the shanties, and every few minutes fresh screams pierce the silence. The scorched streets resound with solid shot gunfire and the cracked spit of splinter rifles at night, as negotiations and assassinations turn out badly. It is said that occasionally Xenos mercenaries can be found stalking the streets of the Null City. It is even rumored that from time to time, the most vicious of their number are called upon to serve the cabals. Within the inner rings that surround the Dark City's core can be found the oldest noble houses. Descendants of the architects of the Fall live in massive mansions that are crested by citadels, full of proud aristocrat warriors. Sorrow Fell, the largest city of these city-states, can trace its lineage to the ancient Eldar. It surrounds a massive promontory that leads into a region known as Corspur. 13 screaming statues of supreme overlords, Abstabel Vecht, stand sentinel over the Sorrow Fell, each representing one of the foundations of vengeance, serving as stark reminders that even the most powerful of the Dark Eldar noble houses were ultimately undone by raw intellect. Elendrak is one of the Dark City's ancient city-states that has literally fallen into shadow. existing in more than one dimension at once. Here amongst the velvet domes the dreaded mandrakes make their lairs. Bathing in the darkness, the outskirts of Elendrak give way to the bone middens of the witch cults, a district buried under mounds of calcareous matter. Here can be found a massive ossuary of millions of skeletons, representative of each of the sentient species in existence, ranging in size from insects to massive colossi, positioned in grim Tebulus and mock battles. They stand throughout the middens as a testament to the Dark Eldar's stature as the apex predator of the galaxy. Beneath these inner districts are the weapon and food factories of the city that are massive in scale. They spread outward and down into the lower spires underneath the old city. Each year these factories ravenously consume millions of workers and slaves, humans, orcs, and Tau, and even other Dark Eldar are amongst their number. Divisions of cruel taskmasters watch over their charges, each of which is locked in a murderous rivalry with their peers. The world beneath the old city puts out a prodigious output of war material, allowing the Dark Eldar war machine to wage its ceaseless war against all intelligent species in real space. Without such labor performed on such a massive scale, the Dark City would soon be forced to feed upon itself. The impossibly high structures of the Dark City's upper regions are the provenance of the warrior elites. 1,000-foot idols of Kabbalite archons and dracons stand incomplete amongst the spiraling skyscrapers that vanish beyond sight. Blood continuously drips down from the highest spires in squalls of red raid. Slaves are forced to crawl across the fascias of titanic buildings, suspended in near invisible webs as they labor to carve titanic likeness to their cruel masters. Further towards the core, the central mass of the towers, statues and spires form a close-packed theater for inter-Kabbalite war. Mercenaries and armored bounty hunters clad in segmented ghostplate move stealthily under vaulted arches, stalking those with a high price on their head. The battleground that exists above the thickets of spires and towers play host to a deadly world of scourges, terrifying aerial predators, as well as the lightning-fast jetbike pilots who hunt them for sport. Though most of High Commorragh is controlled under the iron rule of the Kabbalite masters, this volatile region is firmly under the control of these aerial apex predators. Those who dwell in the areas of High Commorragh consider themselves blessed and have little but contempt for those who fester in what they scornfully term Yenaldia, the necropolis below. Further down into the murk of Commorragh lies the Middle Darkness, an area plagued by Hellion gangs. These skyboard-riding rebels fly through the foul air in great swarms that attack on sight. Though these gangs are known to be feral and wild, they are not adverse to allying with cabals for the right price when a real space raid is in the offering. The witch cults of the Dark Eldar stage displays of ultra-violence in the massive arenas built into their lofty citadels and razor-edged ziggurats, allowing the citizens of High Commorragh to feed upon the acts of wanton murder and killing refined to the level of an art form. These multi-level structures are clustered with barbed stages upon which thousands of warriors and slaves meet a gruesome end. The arena spectators observe from ornate thrones or from anti-gravity pleasure craft, drinking in the pain from a thrillingly unsafe distance. Witches are paragons of physical perfection, and the sirens and succubi that rule over them are supernaturally adept at the art of dealing death. The ruling archons of the cabals know that without the imaginative displays of killing put on in the witch arenas, the Dark Eldar society would soon collapse in order to slake its own eternal thirst for suffering. This practice of feeding the populace of High Commorragh with regular displays of bloodletting is known amongst the archons as Lilianthu Kava, the knife that stays the blade. Around the peaks of the Witch House are the Toroids arenas, elaborately curved racetrack complexes famous for their death races. Cliques of elite jetbikes pilots known as Reavers take part in fighting battles at breakneck speeds around the curvular interior of each arena, hurtling past the ingenious traps and moving blades of each deathscape, careening into each other with their custom-bladed craft and mowing down those nearby with blasts from their sophisticated weaponry. The underworld that lies beneath Commorragh is an exceptionally dangerous place. It is the domain of the homunculi, a twisted brotherhood of torturers and monsters so ancient and thoroughly steeped in evil that their continued existence requires daily acts of indescribable torment. The seedy underside of Commorragh is host to as many edifices and spires as the top. Clustered together, these spires are often hollowed out by controlled acts of destruction in order to form cavernous lairs. Within these deadly complexes, the homunculi ply their trade, dealing body modification, flesh crafting, and drug distillation, and beauty elixirs. Oftentimes, homunculi of similar bent are wont to form into covens, which occupy a vast demision of cells and laboratories under the core. Here they practice their vile experiments, torturing the unfortunates that fall into their clutches, and savoring their endless torment and pain like a fine meal. Most homunculi covens dwell at the bottom of a spiral-edged pits, underneath the core. At the heart of each spiraling labyrinth, the eldest and most vile homunculi dwell, at the heart of their reveling in epic depravities of their own invention. In the depths of Commorragh's central undercore, in a region known only to a select few, stands a massive circular metal door. This door, known as Cain's Gate, is embezzled with glowing runes of warding, bound shut with chains of super-dense star steel. For millennia since the time of the fall of the Eldar, it had remained this way. Beyond Cain's Gate lies the madness of the warp, a hideous rent into the otherwise smooth fabric of the webway that can never be stitched shut or severed. The consequences for the Dark City would be dire indeed, were Cain's Gate ever to be breached, for Commorragh would be opened up to the realm of the warp, and the hellish denizens within. The demons of the Inferium would love to feast upon the souls of the Dark Eldar as readily as they would upon the galaxy's most benevolent peoples. Far above the glinting metallic peaks of Commorragh are the Ilmanar, or Black Suns, dying stars ablaze with the poisoned light that they harnessed at the height of the lost Eldar Empire. Though held in the sub-realms of their own, these celestial phenomena provide a near-endless supply of energy to the Dark City. Their twilight hues glint from the hulls of grav vehicles that swarm from spire to tower, from arena to battleground, and every now and then a thin solar flare curls from the captive sun out into Commorragh, briefly illuminating the horrors below. Each such flare is reflected from a billion panes of crystal across the Dark City, and yet it will barely be heeded by the teeming citizens, for they know that the sun's claws were blunted long ago. Though a few solar cults still exist in Commorragh, most Dark Eldar view their tame star with contempt. To them they are but another resource to be mercilessly exploited. It is said that no starlight can shine upon the Dark Eldar without being harnessed and bled away and eventually snuffed out altogether. This is but a fraction of the surreal sights and landscapes scattered throughout the dread Commorragh. Across the rift of Dead Hope, pillars of bone reach up to form a makeshift bridge into the Pale Fortress. In the City of Titans, enormous statues enact historic assassinations, and coops with terrible inevitability, virtuous heaps infilled to capacity with piles of glassed body parts, sorted into a landscape of limbs, torsos, and heads. And in the bleak wilds of the Iron Fawn, the choking gut clouds of red smog, bringing the corpses of the cursed back to life. Cyclophon gates of crackling jade fire link one realm to another, guarded by the most vigilant warriors, and in Devil's Orchard noisome hanging gardens of grave lotus sprout from a mosaic of the dead. There is no end to the depths of the Dark City, just there is no end to the chilling depravity of its occupants. Astrabel Vect, Archon of the Cabal of the Black Heart, and the present overlord of the Dark City, once related to the Human Torture slave, Gideon, how the Dark Eldar arose, and how Commorragh came to exist. Lord Vecht made it clear that Commorragh exists within the webway. It seemed there was but one way of escaping her, the Chaos God Slaanesh, known as She Who Thirsts, to the Eldar, and that was to flee our homes and leave the physical world behind forever. We came here, into the realm between worlds that we created to traverse the galaxy, safe from harm. Here, the great enemy's grip is weakened, yet, to our Lord's horror, it was not wholly broken. He had brought his people time, a little instant of time but nothing more. Others followed him, each choosing a place for themselves, building new shrines and around them great palaces. Here, where you sit now, is one of the chambers of the original Temple of the Black Heart. You are very privileged, you know. Not many survive to get this far. Most of them break before even reaching the second level. A quote from the Annals of Terror, penned by Lasco Pyre, posthumously pronounced a heretic by the Inquisition, but died by his own hand in 647.m34, describes Commorragh thusly. What can one say about Commorragh, the dark city of the Eldar? It is the embodiment of anarchy and terror. It is fear, hatred, and desperation incarnate. How long I was enslaved in that timeless city, I cannot say. There is no day or night, just an eternal twilight, an ever-present ruddy glow that bathes all living things in the blood light. The air is filled with screams and cruel laughter. When they put out my eyes, my ears alone still conveyed that omnipresent aura of dread and loathing. They took great delight in telling us what tortures and agonies they had prepared, using dread-ridden anticipation as another means to increase our suffering. When the masters denied to speak to us, they brought arcane machines to translate their words. They would not sully their tongues with the language of others. Most of my fellow slaves fell beneath the blades and poisons of those tortures beyond compare. The homunculi and sometimes the succubus of the witches would come and take the fittest to battle against brutal creatures, and skilled fighters in the death of the arenas. 10 men at a time, great warriors amongst humanity, would face a lone gladiator. They stood no chance against the witches, who delighted in toying with their foes, slashing and cutting and darting to and fro, leaving a trickle of blood with every pass. No one dies quickly in the Dark City. They prey upon each other as much as their captives. The great cabals may hold power, but in the twisting alleys and dusk-shrouding corridors, allegiance is secondary to martial skill. To stray into the wrong territory is a tantamount to suicide. Running battles are fought every day. Blood is spilt constantly. The ghastly mandrakes are the worst. One wizened old slave told us. They stalk the shadows of will, plucking their victims from their homes, ambushing the unwary and slicing them to death with their claws. We were never truly imprisoned in the slave quarters, but it was clear that if we left, we would be at the mercy of the Dark City, a barrier more effective than any amount of walls, fences, and razor wire. They made no attempt to hide their deceitful ways, actually glorifying in treachery and betrayal. Assassination, murder, and double dealings are established ways of life to these decadents. Ownership of myself changed hands so many times that I was unsure who were my masters and who were their enemies. Sometimes I was stolen, other times I was traded for raw souls, given as a prize in the arena, or simply taken as a right of conquest. Life is worthless in the Dark City. Only pain, misery, and death have value. Others I saw, humans amongst them, who took to this depraved life with natural empathy. They bowed down to the Eldar and treated them as lords, in return for favors. It is claimed that most promising are taken as apprentices by the homunculi. Most end up as twisted creatures in permanent agony, but others survive and learn, to be let free again into the outside world, to spread their corrupt ways. The Hellions are a constant plague to all. They race through the winding streets, blades shimmering as they randomly lop off limbs and heads with wanton glee, They gather for insane races. Goaded by each other, they attempt death-defying feats of aerial skill. Many die, and when one of the masters dies, others quickly gather to feed upon the escaping soul. They fight each other, bite and claw, if they have no weapons to partake of that precious essence. My escape was miraculous. The Emperor must have rewarded my undying faith in those times. However though, I am physically free. My body bears the scars, the many, many scars. Every breath takes me to a new plane of agony. Every heartbeat sets my jagged nerves with writhing pain. I cannot see, I cannot speak. Most horrid of all, I cannot forget. Nightmares and waking visions plague me. The drip of my own blood, the cries of the anguish haunt me. No one escapes the dark city. Thank you for joining me for this in-depth look into the world of Commorragh and the Dark Eldar who survived there. Join me next time for another in-depth lore video, and stay safe, friends.